All right, hey, Shalom. I want to begin by giving all glory and praises to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachak Chodash. All right, double honor to our beloved elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Shalom to the hopefully elect, and Shalom to all the Akim pushing this truth with sincerity. It's the brother Itazawam from the GMS Columbus, Ohio branch, coming back again with another video through the Spirit. Lord willing, it is edifying. And today, pretty much through the Spirit, this morning, was meditating on a few things, all right? And in particular, I wanted to pose this question to Google or, AI, all right, concerning guys who don't pull their own weight, and I was just thinking about the camps, like, when you're in a camp, all right, or in a body or a team setting, which this is a joint effort, that we are in, being in this ministry, you have to pull your own weight, all right? All hands on deck, you see? Can't be slacking, can't be lazy, can't be idle. Everyone must put in work, you see? Because ultimately, this is a body, all right? This is a body, okay? And for every, member in the body, or Salaki, for, the body to be working, in unison and healthy, all right? All the members have to be on one accord, And I'm just thinking about, in particular, all the different churches amongst GMS, and even us being a small camp. Everyone has to put in work, okay? Everyone has to, again, put in that effort, to be beneficial to the camp. Studying, all right? Being engaged, you see? Being on point, and just building themselves up, all right, for the benefit of the ministry, okay, that we were called to be in, you see? So through the Spirit, I just got on Google and I just, asked Google, I said, I just put in a term used for a guy who was not pulling his own weight, all right? And, from there, I started, linking things to the scriptures, all right? And, the scriptures speak about, slackers, men who are, lazy, all right? And it rebukes that behavior, man, okay? So, for us in this ministry, man, we have to pull our own weight. And again, that requires us studying, all right, being engaged, okay? And ultimately dealing with our lot in the camp head on, okay? And making sure we are fulfilling our duties with whatever role we play, all right? Or whatever role we have, in in the different churches out there, man. Whether you're a disciple, a teacher, deacon, bishop, elder, you have to fulfill that duty, plain and simple. We were all called, into this thing, not to just, be loafers. I'm going to go into some of these words, to sit around, to hang out. No, we got work to do, plain and simple. Okay? Because, ultimately, the role we play in us ultimately taking, or living up to our lot, shows forth our faith that we really believe what we are in, that we're not just, verbally, serving the Lord, but showing that we're serving the Lord in action, okay? Real quick, let's just get that. Faith without works, see? This is James 2:18. Real quick, I'm going to go to the BLB. James 2:18. Let's see what the NLT says. It says, so you see, faith by itself isn't enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it is dead and useless. Now, someone may argue, some people have faith, others have good deeds. But I say, how can you show me your faith if you don't have good deeds? I will show you my faith by my good deeds. I like it in the KJV better. James 2:17, it reads, even so faith, if it have not works, is dead being alone. Yet a man may say, thou hast faith, and I have works. Show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show thee my faith by my works. Right, so the energy that you put in to the ministry, to Yahweh Shai ultimately, all right, shows forth that you have faith in what you are doing and what you believe in. Real quick, let's go to this word works. Okay, works, right. I like this way better. Going to the Greek, is it ergon?
Strong's G 2041. Ergon.
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 It says business, employment, that which anyone is occupied, that which one undertakes to do, enterprise, undertaking, right? This is a business, man. Scripture's cold, man. So if you ain't got works, if you're not toiling, all right, again, this is a business, this is a job. All right, and if you want to keep your position, if you want to stay employed, you got to have works. You got to be laboring. And that which one undertakes to do, enterprise, undertaking, any product, whatever, anything is accomplished by hand, art, industry, or mind. An act, deed, thing done, the idea of working is emphasized in op to that which is less than work. You go down to the Strong's. Toil, see, as an effort or occupation, right? Again, this is a business. What did Yahweh Shai say? Scriptures, man, I tell you, boy. Let's get that. And is that in Matthew? Forget the exact chapter. Or is it in Luke? You can't. This is Luke 2. I'm going to go to 48. It says, when they saw him, they were amazed, and his mother said unto him, Son, why hast thou thus dealt with us? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing, right? Because, he was in the temple teaching, all right? Verse 49, he strayed away from his parents, his, fleshly parents at this time. Verse 49, it reads, and he said unto them, how is that ye sought me? How is it that ye sought me? Was ye not that I must be about my father's business, right? So this is a business. We got work to do. And again, if you believe in, the business or the work that you're putting in, ultimately, that's going to show that you have faith, all right, in what you believe. But you got to have works, all right, to follow up with your faith, man. Plain and simple. You see? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Lord is cold, man. So, bringing me back, to a small conversation I had with AI. Just making it easy on myself through the spirit. Using the advantages of the unicorn, on the right-hand side. So it comes up with, all right, goes into 10 sites, 10 different sites I pulled this information from. All right, I think I see Reddit, Merriam-Webster. I don't know what that Q is. It looks like a Q, but it says a guy who is not pulling his own weight is commonly called a slacker, free rider, or loafer. These terms describe someone failing to contribute their fair share, resulting in others doing extra work. Other more descriptive terms include dead weight, or sometimes a stumble bum, right? And we all have grown up with them type of guys, or even been at work with them type of guys. Guys, again, it's a team effort, a joint effort, to accomplish a certain goal or to maintain, a certain product or thing, whatever the case may be. You always got that one nigga on his phone. One nigga always got to take a bathroom break, always hiding and ducking, from what he's, from his responsibilities, man. Likewise in his ministry. But again, just like we just tapped into, in order to show forth that you have faith, okay, you got to have works, pertaining to the business of Yahweh Yahweh Shai. It all goes hand in hand. You could say you got faith all damn day, but do you have works? Are you going to continue to work? You see? Because you can't just fizzle out. All right? Getting late, you get lazy. Okay? So on and so forth. No, man. Again, this is a business, and we all are employees under the banner of Yahweh Yahweh Shai's quote-unquote company. You see? Yahweh being the CEO, Yahweh Shai being the superintendent, or, the, what they call it, foreman, so to speak, Then what? You got the employees, man. We are the employees of Yahweh Yahweh Shai. Okay? And we got to put in work to show forth our faith, man. We have to labor. It literally goes into toil, to work. And how do we show forth that we're toiling? Studying, reading, like I said, being engaged, and fulfilling our respective lots, or positions, like a business. You got different positions. This is your position. And you are to do the best you can possibly do in that position and excel in it. That's why you have that position. Okay? Again, going back, when you go to common terms, it says slacker, someone who avoids work or puts in minimal effort. Free rider takes the benefits of a group effort without contributing to it. Right, slacker, someone who avoids work or puts in minimal effort, right? Being mediocre. Just going through the motions, Like I said, you got Jake like that in the ministry, man. And that shit is going to fuck off. Of course, every brother ain't on the same level. And it's like that in business. Every employee ain't the employee of the year. It's only one employee of the year. But again, you still apply yourself as an employee, man. And Yahweh Shai has employed us. Think about the talents. See? Let's get that parable too. Let's lock it. Let's get that. We have been employed by Yahweh Yahweh Shai. It's Matthew 25. And let's start at right, because the Lord entrusted, his money with us, man. We're his servants, his employees. It's Matthew 25:13. It reads, it says, watch therefore, for ye know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh. For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants, his employees, and delivered unto them his goods. Right, so we have this product that the Lord has given us to maintain and to hold. It says, unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another one every man according to his several ability. Right. Real quick, let's read in the NLT. It says he gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to his last, dividing it proportion to their abilities. You see, like I said, you got different type of employees. You know, every employee ain't on the same level. It's a business, man. Literally, this ministry is a business. Okay. Like I said, some brothers, and in that case, spiritually speaking, some brothers got heavier lots than the other. But you still have to fulfill your lot and your duty in the ministry, man. Okay? And again, with you doing that, you show forth your faith. All right? By the work that you put in. That shows you believe in this product, you believe in this company that Yahweh Shai has established. And then what comes rewards, comes benefits, comes a 401k, comes a pension. You see? Things you could cash in at the ladder. And for us, and like I said, spiritually speaking, it's the kingdom of heaven. Vacation days, the benefits of you toiling and working for, this company or this business, man. Jumping back to the KJV, it reads, it says, and straightway took his journey. Then he that had received the 5 talents went and traded with the same and made them other 5 talents. And likewise he had received 2, he also gained other 2. But he that had received 1 went and digged in the earth and hid his Lord's money. Right. Slothful, lazy, hid the money, not producing. You see? Verse 19, it says, after a long time, the Lord of those servants cometh and reckoneth with them. And so he that had received 5 talents came and brought other 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained beside them 5 talents and talents more. His Lord said unto him, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. Right. So he gets benefits, man. Get perks. You see? Verse 22, it says, he also that had received 2 talents came and said, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 2 talents. Salakia. Yep. Deliverest unto me 2 talents. Behold, I have gained 2 other talents beside them. His Lord said unto him, well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I'll make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. Then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee, that thou art an hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strawed. And I was afraid, and when hid thy talent in the earth, lo there thou hast that is thine. His Lord answered and said unto him, thou wicked and slothful servant. See? Woo, the scriptures, what? Matthew 25 and 26 NLT says, but the master replied, thou wicked and lazy servant. You see? So again, man, like in this ministry into a business, Yahweh being the owner, you got Yahweh Shai as the president, angels got, top positions and top seats, all right. Trickling on down, us being the employees in our respective positions, and this, this sect of the business, that sect of the business, employee, it's a business, and we have to put in work. You see, once you get hired on, once you put your hand to the plow, you have to put in work, you have to produce. And what? Make more money for the company. You see? The scriptures is cold, man. Everything starts in the heavens, bro. Read 26 one more time in NLT. It says, but the master replied, you wicked and lazy servant. Right. This nigga's lazy. Get this nigga off the job, man. He's lazy. You know, I do concrete construction. Ain't no man, if you lazy, get your ass off the fucking job. Likewise, being in this ministry, if you lazy, get your ass off the job. I don't need you. You're a loafer. You're a slacker. You're dead weight. You're a free rider. What they say, a shirker. Let's read some of these terms real quick. Slacker, someone who avoids work or puts in minimal effort. Free rider, takes the benefits of a group effort without contributing to it. Right, you got that shit that happens. Be three niggas working, one nigga, like I said, he got to always use a restroom. You know? Always on his phone, or I got to take a call. Calling off. And it get paid at the end of the week. Ain't hardly did shit. Deadweight, a person whose presence hinders progress rather than helping. Right. Now the job take longer. This nigga standing around. Spirit, little brother, called me yesterday dealing with this exact same issue. Niggas on the job just standing around with shovels and a phone in their hand. Make it make sense, man. Now pulling your own fucking weight. Low for someone who spends time idly rather than working. Right, just idling. Bullshit. Shirker, someone who avoids duties or responsibilities. Right, get this lazy nigga off the fucking job, man. It says, if you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant, gathered crops I didn't cultivate. 27 NLT, why didst you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it, right? See? So you can't be a lazy servant, man. Plain and simple. It's that fucking simple, man. Now, a little while, I'll put this in the chat. Because, Jake been on this topic a lot lately here in our camp. Laziness, idleness, so on and so forth. All right? We got 22 minutes. Man. I might do a part 2. But through the spirit, I went in, I said, are there more terms? Okay? And then went into some, it says the term for someone not pulling their weight often vary by context, ranging from professional feedback to casual insults. These words are, it says, professional and action-oriented terms. These words often focus on a specific way a person avoids their responsibility. Shirker, someone who actively avoids duties or responsibilities. Gold breaker, an old-fashioned term for an employee who gets paid for work they haven't done, often while pretending to be busy. Coaster, someone who puts in the bare minimum effort to avoid being fired, often coasting on momentum on the rest of the team. Person who exaggerates or fakes illness or inability to work. Was a malingerer, laggard, someone who falls behind and fails to keep up with the pace of the group, right? That's what you got, laggard, so on and so forth. And it goes into more. Sloggy. Time for a nap. All right, and you got more freeloader, free rider, person who takes advantage of others' generosity or efforts without giving anything back. Backpack, slang term for someone who is carried by their group, contributing nothing to a project's success. Straphanger, a person who tags along with a group and expects to share in rewards without contributing to the work, right? See, you got to put in work. It's a joint effort. It's the body. Okay? Sponger, mocher, someone who's habitually relies on others for money or resources, right? Like a leech. All right, asleep at the wheel, someone who was not paying attention or doing their job with necessary diligence. Bone idle, someone who was incredibly lazy, that it seems to be in their very bones. Slug, a person who moves very slowly or is habitually inactive. Cumber, world, a rare archaic term for a useless person who simply cumbers or burdens the world with their presence, right? Make sure we still on. Okay. Yeah, all these terms again, like I said, you hear them a lot in the workforce, so on and so forth. Like I said, I do construction, and you deal with this a lot, man. All these terms, all types of these people. All right, in all professional settings, and even in this ministry, because like I said again, just proving that this ministry is a business, man. Okay. So then, I was compelled to ask. I said, and can you provide Bible scriptures that speak on this behavior? It says the Bible uses the term sluggard to describe someone who is habitually lazy or avoids their responsibilities throughout Scripture, particularly in the book of Proverbs and the letters of Paul. There is strong emphasis on diligence and pulling one's own weight. Okay, and like I said, it's made it easy on myself through the Spirit. Says the New Testament provides some of the most blunt instructions regarding those who refuse to contribute to their own upkeep. Right, and some of these or majority of these in this passage, real quick, I could just read one. 1 Thessalonians 5:8. It's anyone who does not provide for their relatives and especially for their own household has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Right, so you got to take care of yours. Okay, if you don't put in work, you don't eat. Okay, and and particularly in Proverbs, it dies or Salaki, it deals with that. But when you read these things in the spiritual sense, it goes both ways, because what we are seeking that spiritual food, all right, from on high. You see. But Lord, well, I may, make that a separate video. But through the Spirit, I ask for more. It says, are there scriptures that speak on this concerning being a member of the church, like studying, etc.? It says the Bible contains several scriptures that specifically address the responsibility of church members to grow spiritually, study the word, and actively contribute to the body of a Mashiach rather than remaining passive. Okay? And we know, a lot of these scriptures already. All right, here goes a common one, or I will say one we use often. 2 Timothy 2. All right. 2 Timothy 2:15, it says, study to show thyself approved unto the Most High, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Right, and again, going to show you that you studying, you putting in work, etc., ultimately shows forth your faith, man. Because, Jake, I believe, I got faith, all right, but where's your works? What are you doing outside of just believing? Or what are you doing beyond your lip service? Where's your actions? Like they say, I got to see it to believe it, Or, people say, I love you. Like, show me you love me, Where's your works behind that love, so to speak, And again, just doing the bare minimum, all right? A lot of times this isn't enough. Are you going that extra mile for Yahweh Shai, at least trying or attempting or wanting to, putting forth that effort? You see? Let's get another one. Hebrews 5:12, and this was a beautiful one. Let me get this one in NLT. I had briefly read it. All right. Hebrews 5. Hebrews 5. let's start at 11 in the NLT, right? Because you got this that happens as well. It says there is much more, right? And this is pretty much Paul was going heavy, you know what I'm saying, in the spirit concerning Melchizedek, and through him it's how we get that connection between Yahweh Shai and Melchizedek, Malak Tazadok. It reads, it says, there is much more we would like to say about this, but it's difficult to explain, especially since you are spiritually dull and don't seem to listen. Right. Because like I said, you have people like you do now in the ministry, lazy, dull of hearing, okay? Don't pay attention, like I said, not active, not doing their own studying, not eager to learn and grow. Okay, verse 12, it says, you have been believers so long now that you ought to be teachers, teaching others. Instead, you need someone to teach you again the basic things about the words of the Most High. You are like babies who need milk and cannot eat solid food, right? You got that happening today. Jake who should be on a level, but again, through slothfulness, being lazy, not being attentive, not engaging, eager to, learn more, apply the scriptures, study, put in work, general work into the ministry. They're still in the same position that they were in when they first came in, like a babe who can't eat solid food, still a baby. Because, you're not trying to grow, man. You're still on the titty. See? Just to sum it up, you got Jake who's still on the titty. And again, like I said, being in this ministry, every brother is not on the same level. But you shouldn't be in the same position that you were in when you first came in, man. That's a fact. All right? And you should be trying to grow to the best of your ability, man. Whatever the Lord's portion, or whatever the Lord allows, man, concerning your portion. You see? Verse 13, it says, for someone who lives on milk is still an infant and doesn't know how to do what is right. Solid food is for those who are mature, who through training have the skill of recognizing the differences between right and wrong, right? Brothers who are weaned off the milk, who are mature in the faith. But again, you have guys who have been in this thing for a while and are still as babes, man, in the ministry. Okay? Then, another class, 2 Peter 1:10. Give diligence to make your calling and election in the spirit. Because I tapped into this yesterday. 2 Peter 1:10. I'm going to just read it real quick. You go into it, this goes into all the qualities, Jake should add to themselves in this ministry. All right. But ultimately, dealing with it in the 10 verses, 2 Peter 1:10, it says, wherefore, the rather, brethren, give diligence to make your calling and election sure. For if you do these things, you shall never fall. Right. When you go into the word diligence, what is it? Spadazo. Says to hasten, make haste, to exert oneself, endeavor, give diligence, right? You go into the KJV translation count. Endeavor, do diligence, be diligent, give diligence, be forward, labor, study. You see? So all these things, that we just tapped into, these things ultimately will show forth your faith, man. You see? Especially if you're in now, especially if you put your hand to the plow. And again, it's 11th hour Jake who's going to come in, But, for us brothers who are in this thing now, this is what's required. This is the standard. And again, by doing these things, you show forth your faith, man. You see? So again, going, just all the way through it, man. You can't be dead weight in the camp. Okay? Can't be a slacker. Can be a free rider, can be a loafer, all right? And ultimately, again, you putting in work and fulfilling your lot in the ministry, in your respective church shows forth your faith, man. Okay? And again, like we just read in that Matthew concerning the talents, all right? We can't be lazy servants, man. We can't be lukewarm, as the scriptures say in Revelation, the 3rd chapter. Okay? We can't be lukewarm in this ministry. Plain and simple. All right? Because what? Let's just get it. It's Revelation 3. Revelation 3:16. Or start the clock. Yeah, I'm gonna start at 15. It says, I know thy works, that thou art neither cold nor hot. I would thou wert cold or hot. So then, because thou art lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. Right? Can't be in between, man. You gotta be cold or hot. And for us, we need to be hot. Scriptures speak about being fervent. See? Plain and simple, man. So that's it. Through the Spirit, Lord willing, this is edifying to whoever may receive it. Give all glory and praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Hakodash. Shalom.